Every night in Toronto, Richard thinks of his friend Selim.
This is Salem. It was Christmas. It was cool. We had a great Turkish meal. It was a really good time.
Originally from Turkey, Selim moved to Canada a few years ago to live his homosexuality freely. He's unemployed and from time to time lives with Richard, who all of a sudden stopped hearing from his friend.
He would text me to find out what room I was in, because I was in hospital at the time. He was supposed to come and see me, and one day I stopped receiving messages.
Richard lost all hope of finding his friend 2 days ago, when the Canadian police announced that they had identified his body. He had been missing since April 2017.
Often at night I wake up trying to imagine how he died. Selim had become a member of my family, and I liked that a lot.
Selim's presumed murderer is Bruce MacArthur, a 66-year-old landscape gardener and family man. A seemingly unremarkable man, he is now suspected of being a serial killer. He is alleged to have murdered at least 8 people over the past 8 years, homosexuals who frequented Toronto's gay district. It was in the summer of 2017 that criminal investigators began tracking him down. On June 26, 49-year-old Andrew Kinsman disappeared. He was last seen in his neighborhood in the heart of Toronto. He told his neighbor he was meeting a friend for coffee. Andrew is involved in the LGBT movement and is a regular visitor to Toronto's gay district, known as the Village.
We start with the park.
Of course we do. At the time, Andrew's sister and her friends were scouring the neighborhood for clues. His sudden disappearance intrigued the investigators, as it followed that of Selim Essen, who had disappeared 2 months earlier. Like Andrew, the man frequented the gay district. The police decide to launch an investigation. Detective Sergeant Hankin Singer heads the investigation unit. He and his team interviewed the victims' families and friends and examined every detail of their lives.
We carried out several searches and scientific surveys of different objects and locations. We analyzed computers and telephones. We tapped phones. We searched everywhere.
After several weeks of searching, the investigators turned their attention to one man in particular, Bruce MacArthur.
They are keeping the crucial clue that put them on his trail a secret.
But the suspect is said to know both victims and to have had previous experience of police assaults. A year earlier, a man had lodged a complaint against Bruce, who had allegedly tried to strangle him in the back of his van. The investigators decided to place him under surveillance. They discovered that the gardener had just disposed of his vehicle. So they combed all the local junkyards. Finally, it was here, 65 kilometers from Toronto, that their journey came to an end. Dominique Vetteret, the junkyard manager, vividly remembers the visit of 4 detectives who presented him with a license plate number.
They didn't give us any details and we didn't ask. They just said it was a big deal for them. They knew exactly what they were looking for. When I told them we had the van, you could see in their eyes that they were overjoyed.
The investigators immediately loaded the van, a Dodge Caravan similar to this one. A few weeks later, they returned to take DNA samples from Dominique's employees.
They said they had found traces of blood in the van, and that those who had handled the vehicle had to be exonerated.
Did the police find any DNA traces of Andrew and Selim in the van? In any case, they are stepping up their surveillance of the suspect. On January 18th, while staking out Bruce MacArthur's apartment, investigators reportedly saw a man enter his apartment. They intervene. When they entered his apartment on the 19th floor, they found the man gagged and tied to a bed. The apartment was searched. The gardener was taken into custody. The investigators refuse to say whether he confesses to the murders, but they decide to search the properties, where Bruce MacArthur works as a gardener. Over a 3-week period, they inspected some 20 locations in various communes, until they made a macabre discovery in this house in a residential area of Toronto. The police dogs point to these large flower pots. And for good reason. They contain the remains of dismembered human bodies. The homeowner, who had known the gardener for 10 years, is shocked.
We live day by day, we do what we can. I have nothing to add, thank you.
I can now confirm that over the last 10 days, we have found the remains of bodies belonging to at least 6 people.
Among the victims identified, Selim Hassan, but also Andrew Kinsman, and Sarouj Mahmoudi, a 45-year-old who disappeared in 2015, and Skandaraj Navaratnam, 40, who disappeared in 2010. The latter is known to investigators for having been part of another series of disappearances, that of 3 men who vanished in the space of a few months between 2010 and 2012. All 3 frequented Toronto's gay district and were regulars at this bar. At the time, the police launched an investigation they called Project Houston.
The men vanished without a trace. We looked everywhere, heard dozens and dozens of witnesses. We conducted search parties and put out wanted posters in the village and beyond. We had no leads, and it became something of a cold case.
What they didn't realize at the time was that the 3 men had something in common. They knew Bruce MacArthur, who was also a regular at the bar. So, 8 years after the first disappearance, Bruce is charged with the murder of 8 people. Who is this man, described by those around him as jovial and a bon vivant? How could he have fallen into a murderous frenzy? Matt McKinnon is one of his former colleagues. He worked with the gardener on the design of flowered gardens. According to him, Bruce built his success on his XXL flower arrangements in flower pots similar to those containing the bodies.
This is one of Bruce MacArthur's flower pots. They were in all the gardens of the properties where he worked. There were some at the front, some at the back of the houses. They're very elegant flower pots, very expensive. I think they cost $300 just a flower pot. It's crazy. I sat next to these flower pots with the customers and we admired them. So to know what happened, it's shocking for sure.
Matt describes a serious entrepreneur who is adored by his customers.
If his customers adored him, it was because Bruce sympathized with them. There are 2 kinds of contractor. The one who comes in, does his job and does it well. Then there's Bruce, who made a lot of money from the relationships he forged with his customers.
Bruce MacArthur's passion for nature comes from his childhood. He grew up in the middle of the fields in Woodville, a community of 600 inhabitants where farmers were the main inhabitants. He lived on the farm with his sister and parents. Neighbor and friend of the MacArthur family, Robert used to go to school with Bruce.
I'll show you a picture of our public school. There was only one class for different grades. Here's Bruce, and here, I think that's me.
How are the cows?
They ate.
When he learns that his childhood friend has become a murderer, Robert cannot believe it.
I just can't believe it. A guy I grew up with doing such atrocious things. He was just a normal kid. He didn't suffer. He wasn't bright, but in my memories, he wasn't the bottom of the class either. He wasn't mischievous, not differently than any other kid. He avoided fights.
Bruce MacArthur has a first life. He gets married, has 2 children, and starts a home sock business. The family moves into this house, and then, in the late 90s, Bruce comes out of the closet. He left his wife and children and moved to Toronto, a few kilometers from the village. Bruce MacArthur created several profiles for himself on sexual dating sites. In his introductory messages, he is demanding.
I'm looking for men with a kinky side. I'm interested in men who know how to push their limits.
In particular, he frequents SM bars. But for Jocelyn, who was his lover and is still his friend, that doesn't make him a brute.
For me, it was very gentle, nothing violent, no sign of master-slave. He never showed any impatience, any hint of violence. It was always very calm. I even got into the same van where things supposedly happened.
Did Bruce MacArthur have 2 faces? Another of his close friends had a less romantic experience with the gardener. He agreed to answer our questions by video conference. A few months before Bruce's arrest, Peter met him in a restaurant. According to him, they exchanged a kiss. All went well until he walked him back to his van.
He sat in the back seat at the very back of the van, and I was drawn to him. I thought, okay, we'll kiss a little more. And then he held my head so I could give him oral sex. His shirt was pulled up and his pants were down. I stepped back, and with one hand he grabbed my neck and flipped it violently. I felt such pressure that I thought he was going to break my neck in 2. It really upset me.
Peter fought back and managed to free himself from the gardener's grasp. Had Bruce MacArthur's sexual games gone wrong? Or did he kill on purpose? The investigation will have to determine this. His lawyer has always refused to answer journalists' questions. In recent weeks, police have reopened hundreds of unsolved missing persons files. In early March, an 8th body was found near the 7 others discovered in the flower pots. He was a Sri Lankan with no family in Canada, whose disappearance had never been reported. Under the Canadian criminal justice system, Bruce MacArthur faces up to 200 years in prison.